started. Good morning, everyone. I welcome everyone here in today's webinar, and I invite Dr. Kamalpreet Kaur, Chairperson, Institute of Educational Technology and Vocational Education, Punjab University, Chandigarh. Please welcome our guest speaker of the day, Professor Praveen Kumar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. As respected dignitaries, esteemed colleagues, and dear participants, today it's my honor and privilege to introduce you an eminent educationist, Professor Praveen Kumarji. Sir taught English language and literature in Himachal Pradesh for close to 30 years and retired as principal in year 2019. Sir has been actively associated with Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla, in connection with the restructuring of the syllabi for undergraduate classes, besides being a member of Board of Studies in English for 2 years. Sir has co-edited an anthology, The Threshold, which was prescribed by Himachal Pradesh University for BA first-year students. And currently, Sir is the coordinator of English Teachers Forum of Himachal Pradesh. In 2019, Sir was invited by IQAC of St. Stephen's College, New Delhi, to address a select group of students. Sir is frequently invited by Himachal Pradesh State Council of Educational Research and Training as a resource person in various training programs conducted for college and school teachers. Sir has chaired sessions in conferences and seminars on many occasions, and the papers presented by Sir at various forums have been well received and appreciated. Sir, you have spared your precious time for us. We are blessed to have you be a part of this webinar. Now I request you, sir, kindly share your valuable thoughts, knowledge, and your words of wisdom about reflection as a tool for teaching and learning with our participants. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm grateful to Professor Deepti Gupta and Professor Kamalpreet Kaur for giving me this opportunity to share this platform with so many dignitaries and so many illustrious educationists. And today, as has been introduced, I'm going to speak on reflection as a tool in teaching and learning. I'll begin to share my screen. So reflection as a tool in teaching and learning, this is a kind of a subject which touches almost everybody. It touches the teachers, it touches the learners, because through reflection, we can improve our teaching and we can improve our learning. But first, we must focus on the term, what exactly reflection is. This is a term which we have been using quite frequently in our day-to-day conversation. But reflection in the present context in which I'm going to talk about, it is not a very casually, randomly used term, but it is something which is highly structured, which I'm using in a very, you can say, limited context. So reflection in the present context means a systematic way of thinking about the process of learning. It is about learning from experience, thinking about what we did, about its results, and in ways we could do things differently next time. Through reflection, we can record our development. We can know our strengths and weaknesses. We can develop self-awareness. We can plan our own development, and we can learn from our mistakes. So reflection as a tool is an extremely important tool for all the teachers and learners. But before talking about the theoretical aspects of reflection, I would like to talk about some real life examples. And the first example that comes to my mind is of Sachin Tendulkar in conversation with Guru Prasad. And some of you must have read somewhere in the newspapers, or if somebody is in the habit of tweeting and watching the tweets, must have noticed that a few years ago, Sachin Tendulkar gave out a tweet. And the tweet was about Guru Prasad. Actually, he didn't remember his name, but this was a man whom he had met in Taj, Chennai almost 20 years ago. And when he met him there, Guru Prasad approached him and told him that he wanted to talk to him about cricket. Would it be all right? So here is a man who is a very normal kind of man, just ordinary. And on the other hand, we have a person who is considered to be legend. And this common man is asking a legend to talk about cricket. But Sachin Tendulkar allowed him to speak. And he said, okay, go ahead. What do you want to say? And he told Sachin Tendulkar that whenever he uses an arm guard, he has noticed that his wrist movement is restricted and he's unable to use his bat in a proper manner. And Sachin Tendulkar was completely flummoxed. He didn't know how this gentleman could know about it because he had not discussed this problem with anybody at all in the world. Only Sachin knew about it and nobody else. And here was a man, a commoner, talking about such a complicated, such a very subtle kind of an issue. So Sachin asked him, how did you notice and who told you about it? So he told him that he is a very keen watcher and he watches each and every innings played by Sachin. And he has been doing it repeatedly over the years. And so he was able to notice that his wrist movement is restricted to some extent when Sachin used the arm guard. And Sachin took this advice in a very serious manner. The conversation lasted hardly 1 or 2 minutes. But next time when Sachin came to play, he had redesigned his arm guard and he subsequently started scoring runs more easily, and he was not getting out so quickly and so easily and so frequently as it was happening when he was using that arm guard. So I think this is an example of deep reflection and very careful observation. And the second name that comes to my mind is that of Isaac Newton. It was summer of 1665. Cambridge was evacuated on account of the plague, and Newton retired to his native village, Woolsthorpe. The situation was almost similar to what we saw in recent times during this pandemic, that our institutions were closed and universities were vacated. So something similar happened in Cambridge also at that time. It was a period of forced isolation, but Newton did not waste his time by not doing anything or by just wasting his time. He worked feverishly, and by the age of 23, he had discovered 3 of the greatest discoveries in science. The first was a mathematical discovery, differential calculus. The second was composition of light, and the third was laws of gravitation. And he has recorded whatever he discovered during that period in a very seminal book, and that book is called Principia Mathematica. And a famous economist, R.W. Keynes, has talked about him, about his power of concentration. And he says his peculiar gift was the power of holding continuously in his mind a purely mental problem until he had seen straight through it. He could hold a problem in his mind for hours and days and weeks until it surrendered to him its secret. So the first thing that we want to discuss is what exactly is reflection and how does reflection impact learning and teaching. It was John Dewey who used the term reflective learning for the first time in 1916 in the context of pedagogy, and he believed that life is an experiential journey in which we come up against challenges and we need to solve these challenges. And we can solve these challenges, we can find out answer to these challenges through deep reflection. But as far as teaching and learning is concerned, we know that learning is primarily mediated by a teacher. Especially in the early years of a child, it is through the mediation of a teacher that a learner learns lots of things. But the question arises, what kind of teacher do we need? Do we think, is it enough for a teacher to be knowledgeable and articulate? If a teacher has lots of knowledge, he is very articulate, but he does not have one particular trait, then he would not be considered a good teacher. And when we think of a teacher, the name of Socrates comes to mind, because for teaching, Socratic method is considered to be the best method of teaching. And what was Socratic method of teaching? We know Socrates was never interested in offering answers to questions in a very rapid manner, in a speedily manner, because most of the time teachers feel that if a student is asking a question and the teacher is not responding to the questions fairly enough, quickly enough, then he's not considered to be a good teacher. But answering so quickly is not that important. And Socrates used to encourage students to think about the question they had asked. And we can use the term reductio ad absurdum. It means that he used to reduce the problem to such a level that ultimately the person who asked the question was able to answer the question himself. So that was Socratic method. Instead of replying instantaneously to the question posed to the teacher would try to motivate the student. He would ask him questions repeatedly and then ultimately handhold him to a point that the questioner is able to answer the question himself or herself. That was the Socratic method, and we think that this method is extremely useful. Now, I'm quoting a few lines from a famous American poet, Robert Frost, and the name of the poem is Two Tramps in That Time. And here he makes a very beautiful observation. He says, but yield who will to their separation? My object in living is to unite my evocation and my vocation. As my two eyes make one in sight, only where love and need are one, and the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and the future's sakes. So my primary concern in these lines is evocation and vocation. Vocation is the profession we undertake, and evocation is what we do out of love. Because we love certain things, that's why we decide to do it. And in this poem, what happens? Two tramps, it means two woodcutters. Tramps could be anybody, but here in this particular context, it were the woodcutters. They were passing through, and they noticed that the poet was cutting the woods. And they felt that this was their profession. Why is this man cutting the woods? Because he's doing just for joy. And this is a question of livelihood for these woodcutters. So why should this work not be shifted to them? So looking at these people and the way they were looking at him in a very questioning manner that he was doing something wrong, he tried to philosophize. And he tries to explain his position by saying that my object in living is to unite my evocation and my vocation. It means we can do a work in the best possible manner. A teacher can be a best teacher only if he unites these two things. He does his profession in such a manner that he is completely 100% involved in what he's doing. Here, another name comes to my mind of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein also wrote something similar to his son in a letter. And he wrote to him like this: I'm pleased that you find joy with the piano, This and carpentry are, in my opinion, for your age, the best pursuits. Better even than the school. Mainly play the things on the piano which pleases you, even if the teacher does not assign those. That is the way to learn the most. That when you are doing something which with such enjoyment that you don't notice that time passes. I'm sometimes so wrapped up in my work that I forget about the noon meal. So Einstein also is saying something similar here, that if we are doing something and we are so completely engrossed in doing that, that we forget about our surroundings, we forget about the people around us, we completely lose sense of time. It means we are able to accomplish this task in the best possible manner. Again, I'm quoting a few lines from literature, and these lines are from Mark Twain's novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Tom is a very young boy, and he made a mistake, and his aunt decided to punish him by asking him to paint the hedges outside. And he was extremely bored because the day was beautiful, the sun was shining, and he did not want to do that work. But he had no choice. So he decided that he must do something creative so that he can extricate himself from that work and he can employ somebody else in doing that work. So what exactly he did? He tried to reposition his work in such a manner that he was able to attract other boys. And he was able to present his work in such a way that others started thinking that what he was doing was something very significant. And what they were doing, for instance, they were jumping, playing, they were moving about, rolling in the mud. That was insignificant. So by presenting his work as if it was extremely important, he was able to attract everybody. And then he assigned his work to all those boys, and he started enjoying the little things everybody offered to give his work to them. So Tom said to himself that it was not such a hollow world after all. He had discovered the great law of human action without knowing it, namely that in order to make a man or boy covet a thing, that is the crucial word here. If you want to make a man or a boy covet a thing, it is only necessary to make the thing difficult to attain. So whatever is easy for us, we generally do not take interest in that. But if you find that something is so far away from us, so beyond our approach, then it becomes attractive to us. So he says work consists of whatever a body is obliged to do. Work consists of whatever a body is obliged to do. And that play consists of whatever a body is not obliged to do. So he has clearly demarcated work and play. So if you find something burdensome, it becomes work. If you find something enjoyable, it becomes play. So in our life also, in our learning, in our teaching also, if we can bring these two components together, if we can do our work in such a manner that we start feeling as if we are enjoying, we are just playing, we are not doing something very cumbersome, then we begin to enjoy our work, and our teaching also becomes much more effective and much more useful to the students. So reflective learners, they assimilate new learning and they relate it to what they already know. So the first word is assimilation. And assimilation, as we understand, is an extremely important word in the sense, for instance, we think in terms of taking food. We take food, but if our body is not able to digest that food properly and able to assimilate that into a bloodstream, then our food will have no value. If it simply passes our system and is just excreted, then it will have no nutritious value for us. So assimilation is important. Similarly, in learning also, assimilation is important. So reflective learners assimilate new learning and they try to relate it to what they already know and make it useful for their own purpose and translate thought into action. So we have a certain set of knowledge, a body of knowledge. Then we allow knowledge to flow in. And then through reflection, we try to modify that learning in such a manner that we use it very purposeful and ultimately translate that into action. For reflection, another important thing and something which is central to reflection, that is metacognition. But before we talk about metacognition, we must talk about cognition. Cognition, in fact, is a mental process that includes memory, attention, reasoning, problem solving, and decision making. It is through cognition that a person is able to process information and is able to make sense of the world around him. And metacognition, in the simplest possible words, is thinking about thinking. It means it is thinking about the process of thinking. It is defined as a scientific study of an individual's cognitions. It deals with active control of cognitive processes. It refers to one's awareness of an ability to regulate one's own thinking, and awareness of the thinking process that allows them to close the gap between what they know and what they need to know. Because it is not possible for anybody to have all kind of information. But if we are open and receptive, and we are aware that there are certain things which we lack in, and we try to fill the gap, we try to minimize the gap between what we know and what we need to know about that particular thing, it means metacognition and reflection, they are working. So let's discuss a bit about reflective learning process. So in reflective learning process, the most important thing is identifying a situation and reflecting on its execution. For instance, we may think of a bridge or a dam that we wish to construct. So before constructing a dam, we need to look at lots of things so that we are able to achieve the goal without minimum losses, without any extra cost, and without wasting too much time. So there was a bridge, Quebec City Bridge in Canada, that collapsed in 1907 under its own weight. Normally, we believe that it only happens in India, that we construct a bridge or a dam and it collapses. But no, these things keep happening from time to time throughout the world. Even in the most advanced countries, this have been happening. So this happened in 1907 when it was noticed that initially it was planned to have a certain amount of weight. But later on, it was realized that it was made in excess of 8 million pounds. It means the material that was used was in excess of by 8 million pounds of amount that was initially planned. And somebody noticed that the pillars were gradually bending, but nobody took it very seriously. And the result was it collapsed in due course. So when we try to construct a bridge, we need to think about the corrosion, whether the material that we are using, it will corrode, the quality of material we are using, the suspension that we are employing, the technical mistakes that we may make, and sometimes the accidental overload. And that happened in Bulgaria in 1978, when a very large number of spectators, they assembled on the bridge, and of this huge number of spectators, the bridge collapsed. So when we identify a situation and we reflect on its execution, sometimes we begin to understand that this was the mistake that we committed. So through reflection, we can rectify that mistake, at least not that time, but subsequently in our future executions, we can rectify, we can improve upon what we have done. So we can think about what happened and why, think about our responses and our behavior, and gradually we can theorize about the experience. So first is understanding, and then for future use, we can theorize about that experience. And we can think whether the thing that we achieved, did it match with our preconceived ideas? For example, we had a certain idea in our mind, we had a preconceived idea that we wanted to achieve this thing in a certain manner. So was your execution very close to your preconceived ideas? And then through experiment for change, we can make some improvements. For instance, in a classroom, if we forget about the things from real life or life where lots of other things also matter, if we visualize a classroom situation, in a classroom situation, a student does something, or you go to a class and you find that you return from your classroom utterly frustrated. Sometimes you return from class absolutely delighted. When you return from the class absolutely delighted, it means that your performance today was very, very good. It was up to the mark. It matched your preconceived ideas about yourself. And when you are frustrated, then what happens? We understand that we have not been able to perform at the highest level. So how do we get to know that today we need to get frustrated and we need to get happy? It's only through reflection that we can understand that today what we did was good enough or not. So learning is actually an active process. And as a very famous saying goes, tell me, I forget. Show me, I remember. And if you involve me, I understand. So in order to illustrate reflective practice, let's talk about one of its components, and that is, for instance, goal setting. And the first thing is the importance of goal. The goal you decide, the goal you choose. Most of the time it happens that we choose a goal, but we don't know why we have chosen that goal. So we need to reflect on the need to select that goal and not some other goal. For instance, whether we should become a musician or an academician. Why is it important for us to have this particular goal and not some other goal? We need to reflect on that. The second is specificity of the goal. Unless we are very specific about what we want to achieve, then we'll not be able to achieve, we'll not be able to know whether we have come close to what we wanted to achieve. If you don't have a finish line, you will not be able to know whether you got there or not in time. So you need to be specific. For instance, you need to be specific that you want to finish this work within this period of time, for instance, 6 months or 7 months or 1 year, whatever. So if you are specific, then you'll be able to know that your goal was achieved within that stipulated time frame or not. So goal should be very specific. And the third is your goal should be realistic. You need to know whether it is achievable, whether you are likely to succeed in achieving that goal, or the goal you have set for yourself is very far-fetched. For instance, if somebody decides without being having the right background, without being having the right constituents in his personality, and somebody decides to run for the, you can say, topmost post of the country. For instance, somebody decides that he wants to become the president of the country, but the situation is not conducive, but the right ingredients are not there. He doesn't have the kind of qualities which are needed to become the president of a country. So if you decide to have such a goal, it becomes highly unrealistic. One would not be able to achieve this. So one should be very clear about the kind of goal one has in one's life. And next is planning aspect. Is your planning robust? Are the plans that you've made for yourself, will you be able to succeed in? Have you looked at the situation from different perspectives? Have you looked at the unforeseen challenges that may come in your path? And if, for an instance, some problem comes in your path, would you be able to rework your plan? So planning aspect is important. And the last is deadlines. Can it be accomplished within the time frame? Because if we have too much time, then we tend to lose focus. And everybody faced a similar dilemma in the present times, in the last 4-5 months, when the lockdown happened, and everybody thought they had so much of time at their disposal. And during this period, some people were very creative, but most of the people just wasted their time because they had so much of time at their disposal, and so they couldn't concentrate properly. So having too much of time at your disposal, you begin to procrastinate. You start thinking that, yes, still so much of time is left, and you can complete this work towards the end of your time frame. So we need to see if we would finish the work, if we were allowed one less day, if we were allowed 1 week less. So important thing is adaptability in the changed circumstances. For instance, if the circumstances change, so are we able to adapt? Are we able to mold ourselves in such a way that we are able to finish the work within the deadline that is given to us? So let's have a look at what some of the past philosophers have talked about reflection and learning and knowledge. For instance, Plato believed that knowledge is present from birth, and all future information is mere recollection of something the soul has already learned previously. So he was trying to say that knowledge is already available, and the soul is simply a receptor. It is simply receiving information. It is recollection of something the soul already knows. So nothing new is happening to an individual. John Locke, on the other hand, he offered a counterpoint. He proposed blank slate theory. And in the blank slate theory, he tried to propose that knowledge and ideas originate from sensation and reflection, which we know by the name of theory of empiricism. It means that certain sensations are there. It means we are receiving some impressions. Our senses are receiving those impressions. And on the basis of those sensations, we are getting knowledge. We are getting ideas. For instance, the fire is burning and somebody touches the fire and somebody gets burnt. So it is happening through an empirical method. Theories of learning were proposed by many important theorists, and I have written a few important names: Jean Piaget, Lev Vygotsky, Benjamin Bloom, Jerome Bruner, Abraham Maslow, and a few others. But it's a very detailed subject, but I'm going to focus on 3 labels on, and one is behaviorism, second is cognitivism, and the third is social constructivism. So behaviorism was proposed by Thorndike and Skinner. They were the main proponents. And this theory was proposed in the 19th century, and it believes that knowledge is sum total of behavioral response to environmental stimuli. So it simply suggests that there is a predefined body of knowledge, and we are receiving that knowledge in a very passive manner. It means passive absorption is happening. Teacher tries to transmit correct behavioral responses which are absorbed by students. So here it means that knowledge is existing outside of an individual, and each individual is getting certain sensations from outside, some behavioral responses to the environmental stimuli, and through those environmental stimuli, he's absorbing that predefined body of knowledge. The second is cognitivism. It was initiated in the late 1950s. And here, the learner actually constructs knowledge system of cognitive structures. The learner assimilates and accommodates new information. So accommodation is important. You already have a body of knowledge, but you are accommodating any new information or knowledge that is coming your way. So here it is a matter of assimilation and accommodation of new information. It is an intrinsic process, and the learner sets their own goals and motivate themselves to learn. And here teacher also mediates, and he tries to facilitate learning by providing an environment that promotes discovery and assimilation based on the idea that knowledge is independent and external of the learning. So in cognitivism, we are assimilating and then accommodating knowledge. The third is social constructivism. Knowledge constructed within social context through interaction. It means we are part of a social setup, we are part of a community, and we are learning through social interactions. For instance, if you look at the webinar today, so many knowledgeable people, so many people who are from the field of education and field of literature or different subjects, they are all assembled here, and we are trying to interact, because after this presentation, there'll be an interaction, there'll be question answer session. So in this social setup, we'll be transacting information, and in the process, we will develop certain ideas and we will have knowledge. So it's a collaborative process of assimilation and accommodation. So in social constructivism, the learning goals are determined both by the learners, and extrinsic rewards are provided by knowledge society. And group work is encouraged, and collaborative learning is facilitated by teachers and guides. A Danish philosopher, Søren Kierkegaard, said, "The irony of life is that it is lived forward, but understood backwards." It means we keep on living our life. It's constantly moving forward and forward. Each moment that we are passing, that is taking us towards the future. And when we are flowing with the life, at that time, it's not possible for us to stop and reflect. We can reflect only after the act is committed. Only after what we wanted to do, we have done, then we can look backwards and we can think about what we did, whether we did it right or not. So that is the irony of life, that we are living forward, but we are trying to make sense of life by looking backwards. So this process of reflection starts once the act is over, and forward practice remains uninformed. And the danger for reflection is that if practice is limited to understanding it backwards, then forward practice remains uninformed. It means while the life is constantly moving forward and forward, we are not able to understand various intricacies of the situation we are in. But afterwards, through reflection, we can understand that these were the things where we lacked. These were the areas where we were very strong and we were able to perform well. And if learning is through practice, then reflection on practice is crucial, and teacher preparation is the obvious place for it to be initiated and nurtured. It means if practice is important, if practice matters, then reflection on practice is important. And teacher can play an extremely important role in this, because by making a teacher a deeply reflective human being, then he can become a better teacher. So a teacher, through reflective learning, through solitary reflection, through perpetual problem solving, and questioning the status quo, they come to recognize the repetitive cycles and reflexive loops which limit their potential for tolerance and acceptance. It means a teacher needs to be a solitary reflector. He needs to be a person who thinks when he was sitting all alone, when there is nobody to interrupt his thoughts completely. And here I am reminded of a famous mathematician and logician, Descartes. And Descartes was very famous for thinking very deeply, for reflecting. And once it happened that some of his friends came to his room, and it was almost 11 o'clock in the morning, and he was still in bed. And his friends were surprised, and they asked him what he was doing. Why you haven't got up? It's quite late. And he simply said, I'm reflecting. And he used to believe that for reflection, you don't need many tools. You don't need different kind of scientific gadgets. You simply need a room, and there you can sit quietly and reflect. So reflection in isolation, that's important for a teacher. And the second is perpetual problem solving. So in the classroom, most of the time, teacher plays this role of a perpetual problem solver. The students are constantly offering problems to him. They're posing problems to him, and he's trying to solve these problems. And questioning the status quo. It means there are certain things we constantly believe that this is like this, but it is the duty of a teacher through reflection that he questions what we have been believing without any analytical understanding of it. So if a teacher is in the habit of reflection, if a teacher is in the habit of questioning the status quo, if a teacher is open to changes within himself, then he can understand that he also suffers from certain problems. There are certain repetitive cycles within himself. There are some reflexive loops. And due to these loops and the repetitive cycles, he doesn't have tolerance and acceptance. And what does it mean in the context of a classroom? Sometimes there is a student who is posing very uncomfortable questions, and the teachers get very irritated. So that's possible for two reasons. One is either the student is posing very frivolous questions, the teacher is getting irritated. And the second is the teacher is unable to answer those questions properly. But generally it happens that teachers are not in the habit of accepting that they don't know that answer, and they would answer that questions tomorrow or day after tomorrow, after understanding it properly. So teacher also needs to be tolerant, and he needs to accept that there can be some shortcomings within himself also. And it is vital for effectively managing our classrooms, which are composed of students from different cultural and social backgrounds with diverse beliefs and values. There are only a very few colleges and universities in the country or in the world where the students are a harmonious lot. We do not have very homogeneous classes. If we think of a college like Mayo College, or think of a school like Doon School, that's quite possible. that we can have a very homogeneous kind of a classroom where students only of a certain cultural strata are living there. They are studying together and their beliefs are similar, their values are similar, their social backgrounds are similar. But normally in our classrooms, we have students from different cultural backgrounds and social backgrounds. The beliefs are different. And it becomes difficult for a teacher to negotiate all these different students and use his classroom for teaching in an effective manner. So it is through reflection that he'll be able to manage this. He'll be able to negotiate this. Yes, the next thing is repositioning. So by repositioning a seemingly negative event, the teacher may see an opportunity. And the last 4-5 months, we have seen this a lot. That the pandemic came, everything became topsy-turvy, the situation became totally confused, and people didn't know how to react, how to behave. But there were some people who repositioned the entire situation. And they tried to see the opportunity in this. For instance, in the kind of conflict we are having with China, if we reposition it and we start thinking that this conflict may have some advantages for India, in the sense that many big businesses will be setting their R&D offices or their manufacturing plants in India. So there can be an opportunity. So this kind of, you can say, understanding develops if we reposition a situation, and this is possible in a classroom also. So every situation, and especially the difficult situations, they have a hidden potential. And it is for a teacher and a learner to understand the hidden potential of a situation. For instance, we are having this webinar. So could we imagine a few months ago that this was possible to interact and connect with people from different parts of the world through this medium? It was just impossible, just even to visualize. And these days, we get to hear some very important people whom we could never think we would ever be able to interact at all. So this is repositioning of this critical situation and finding hidden potential of this situation. Second is repositioning. The teacher looks for the lessons to be learned in any situation. Because every situation has some lessons, but these lessons sometimes remain hidden. Sometimes we are not receptive. Sometimes we are not keen to learn, but the lessons are always there. Then in a classroom, this is important, repositioning confrontation as energy to be rechanneled. Sometimes we have students in our classroom who have a very confrontational approach. They behave in such a manner. They make it difficult for a teacher to handle a classroom. But if you have such a lot in your classroom, it may mean that they have abundance of energy. And probably the energy is not getting channelized properly. Probably we need to find a way so that we could channelize their energy in such a way that it is positively, constructively used. So repositioning confrontation can be very positive. Repositioning aggression as a cry for help. If somebody is very aggressive, it doesn't mean essentially that the individual is bad. We need to look at the psychology of the person. We need to understand the mental issues of that person. We need to understand why that person is behaving in such an aggressive fashion. Because normally, any normal person would not be very aggressive. But if a person is very aggressive, probably he's in need of help. He's crying for help. And if a teacher has reflective habits, the teacher may be able to understand that he needs help. I need to be empathetic to such a person, to such a student. And by being empathetic, the teacher can improve the performance of the student, and ultimately improve the overall learning climate of the classroom. Repositioning defines as a request for communication. Somebody is very defiant in the classroom, so he needs communication. He wants to communicate with you. Initially, we may get irritated. We may feel that the student is not behaving, the student is disrespectful, he's being very defiant, he's disobedient. So we may think in very negative terms. But if we establish a channel of communication with the student, if we understand that he is requesting by being defiant, he's requesting for communication by being defiant, if we understand this, then probably the situation will turn in a very positive manner. And the last is repositioning attention seeking as a plea for recognition. And this we are seeing these days. This has always been a problem, but in the modern times, we see that this has been a very complicated problem, that most people are attention seeking. Although it's a negative trait, but still, there are lots of people who have not proper recognition, and they are demanding recognition, but demanding recognition in such a way that you are seeking attention by all means, by negative means, by bullying or by troubling somebody, by creating hiatus in the society. So that's not acceptable. But still, we need to understand the mental state of such a person who is seeking attention. Probably he or she is not very happy in the situation in which he or she is living. So they are demanding attention because they need some kind of recognition. So in short, I'm trying to say that reflection is a fundamental thing that a teacher and his students needs to inculcate. And by being very reflective, we can improve our learning and we can improve our teaching. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'm just starting my video. That was really very informative, sir. There are some questions which I would like to ask you on behalf of the participants. I'll just go one by one. Okay. Somebody who's logged in as guest by has asked, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
How do we relate reflection process with our value system, and what impact the value system has on the end results of learning?
Is there the chat box? The question
Yes,
is there in the chat box?
Yes, it's there, but you have to scroll a little bit. I'll repeat it. How do we relate reflection process with our value system, and what impact the value system has on the end results of learning?
Let me have a look at it. Kindly repeat the question again. Yes, because I have not been able to notice in the chat box.
How do we relate reflection process with our value system?
Okay.
And what impact the value system has on the end results of learning?
Value systems are extremely important in anybody's life. But again, reflection plays an important role in the sense that just now I talked about questioning the status quo, questioning all the beliefs that we have in our life. So value systems vary from one individual or one society to another society, from one country to another country. So value systems are not absolute in themselves. So through reflections, sometimes we can make some suggestions, we can make some improvements, and we can think that probably this value system we have been holding so dear to us, probably that was not altogether useful to us. So our learning can improve if we reflect on the values and we try to reinterpret value in the current scenario.
And I guess, sir, is it not correct that even through reflection, we might even modify our value system? I think the question is like,
yes, we can modify our value system through reflection, because by reflecting on any values, okay, through reflection, we can understand what kind of value system we are holding, whether they are the right kind of values. But it's difficult for all of us to agree on one particular value system, because it will always remain a very debatable issue whether the value system that I'm holding and somebody else is holding, whether the value systems, his value system is correct or my value system is correct. Because it's not a kind of a body of knowledge which is very scientific in nature. It relates to our emotions, it relates to our environment and the kind of society in which we are living. So value systems in themselves are not absolute, and they are always ready for reinterpretation. So through reflection, we can reinterpret, we can re-examine them, and we can come to an entirely different conclusion.
yes, I think the youth today is actually struggling with these things. I request whosoever has turned on the music, mute everything. Well,
Yeah.
sir, some student has been listening to background music, I guess. Anyway, next question. Students, please don't do that. We are here for a very serious discussion. Be careful of what you are doing. Okay, sir. Next is from Anita. It's from Anita. Sorry, Anita K. Anita K. says, symbolically speaking, reflection denotes self-discovery or self-introspection. Today, from spiritual perspective, it has entered into all aspects of life. How far the global tech-savvy world has taken into the benefits of reflection? How far the global tech-savvy world has taken into the benefits of reflection?
I don't think there is any contradiction between reflection or tech-savvy world or spiritual perspective, because we know that Apple's boss, Steve Jobs, he also used to come to India, and he used to come to India to seek solace in the spiritual enlightenment that is possible in India. So we normally believe that the world which is very tech savvy just doesn't believe in the spiritual world, but the spiritual values, they are useful, and it is always possible to have both these together. We can be tech savvy, at the same time we can think about we can think of spiritual matters, we can enlighten our life through this. So a combination of both these things is possible, I believe. So there is no inherent contradiction between spiritual values and you can say the advancement in the world of technology.
I agree. Okay, from Kamyani Bisht, there's a question. How possible is it for one to arrive at a desirable degree of metacognition? Aren't there too many wheels in our understanding of our understanding?
How possible it is for one to arrive at a desirable degree of metacognition? Aren't there too many veils in our understanding of understanding? Yes, that's true. It's not that easy. To say it theoretically is very easy, that we are able to think about our thinking. We are able to completely understand the process of learning, but the process of learning is not that easy to understand, because it has lots of layers and layers, as she has pointed out. And everybody is a product of the kind of environment he or she has been living, the kind of teachers he or she came into contact. It means our surroundings also contribute a lot. The kind of books we read, that also contributes a lot. So all these things contribute a lot in this manner that it is not always possible to have a say that we are able to understand this absolutely perfectly. So the process of thinking is a very complicated process, and too many factors are involved in this. So to say that it is a very straightforward, very linear path, that's not there.
I think we learn that throughout our life. It's not easy.
Yes.
Okay, so Dr. Monica Lawat asked, is reflection synonymous with realignment of systems and subsystems? Ma'am, if you're there, can you unmute and please let us know which systems and subsystems you're talking about? Monica Lawat. And
is reflection synonymous with realignment of systems and
yes, can you ask your question in detail?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible to you?
Yes, very clear.
yes.
Yeah, in terms of system and subsystems, the kind of pedagogy, the learning outcomes, the learning objectives that we frame, the ecosystem of the whole learning process, I'm asking about it. So basically, it is a positive move, positive direction towards which we move that brings up favorable changes into the whole process. So whether it is looking into the matters of the deficiencies and flaws which we are countering in terms of this learning ecosystem. Thank you.
Ma'am, actually, yes. Thank you for the question. Because as I just now pointed out in case of Kamayani's question, that it is not always possible for anybody to arrive at a definition, to arrive at an understanding which may be called perfect understanding. So alignments and realignments are always possible between systems and subsystems, between understanding one thing and another thing. It means that whenever we have a situation in front of us, I understand it in a particular way, somebody else understands it in a different way. So different perspectives may be about the same situation. So it is possible to have different perspectives and to arrive at a more holistic understanding of something, different perspectives need to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Vikinder Singh has asked a question, but I think your question answers itself. He says, is reflection only important for value system? Well, we have done the whole session. Sir, would you like to?
Reflection is useful not only for value system, not only for classroom teaching, not only for studies. It is useful in each and every activity that undertake in this world. Whatever we do, reflection is important. For instance, today we are conducting this webinar. So the way I'm answering the question, afterward, I'll be able to reflect on what I did, whether I was able to understand the questions properly, whether I was able to respond to the questions properly. So everybody would be reflecting on this. So in each and every situation that we do, reflection is possible. So reflection is not confined to one particular area. Reflection touches each and every aspect of human life. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, sir. One more question is there. Sir, this is from Vikinder Singh. Do you think that somehow metacognition leads to overthinking because it's sort of thinking about thinking?
No, I don't think it is overthinking, because when we think something, for instance, we learn something. If I take up a dictionary and start reading the words, okay, so it is possible to read a few words, and next day again I read a few words. I try to remember a few more words next day. So in 3-4 days, beyond that, it will not be possible for me to remember more words. So if I use metacognition, if I use my thinking process, then I can devise a method by which I can understand that this methodology is deficient in this area, and I can improve it in this manner. For instance, when a periodic table was announced, and there are many people who try to find out certain keys, certain ways in which periodic table can be remembered. So sometimes we try to devise certain methodology that if we want to learn it, there are some shortcuts, there are certain ways through which we can. For instance, if we talk about Vedic maths, so Vedic maths is also something similar, that we are not using the kind of methods that we have been using, the kind of methods we've been taught in the classroom, but we are using some methods which were used by our ancestors. And some of these methods, they reduce the time that we spend in arriving at some answer. So thinking about the process of thinking is not bad, because how we come to realize something, how we understand something, so it is always possible to theorize about it and to arrive at a better understanding of the process of learning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is one question which is being asked again. In what way the NEP 2020 National Education Policy has taken into account reflection and metacognition as the main ingredient?
I've not been able to hear your question.
In what way the NEP 2020, can you hear me now?
In what way?
The NEP National Education Policy 2020 has taken into account reflection and metacognition as the main ingredients. In fact, I think we had a 2-day seminar on this also recently from this the other department. However, can you see the question in the chat now?
I've not been able to see, but National Education Policy talks about the way our education should move ahead, because it wanted to make some paradigm shift in the kind of learning we are having. But it doesn't deal with such things as metacognition, because they are part of the academic syllabi that we do. NEP is the framework which talks about the kind of education we need to have. So it is not about these internal issues about metacognition or about reflection.
Okay.
Yes, the host is.
Nandini Munjal, I'll just take one or two more questions because it's already 1 hour, it's 4 o'clock, so I'll take the last few questions. And the rest, students, you can mail to us and we'll get back to you. The question is from Nandini Munjal. She says reflection can lead to understanding on different perspectives from all around. How can one deal with that to satisfy and respect everyone's opinion?
When we want to arrive at the truth, then everybody's opinion needs to be taken into account. But it's not necessary that we pay respect to everybody's opinion. It means we don't necessarily think that everybody's opinion needs to be given a place. It means that we need to consider what each and every individual is saying, but it's not necessary when we finally arrive at some conclusion, then each and everybody's opinion should be given a place in that. Because sometimes we can reject somebody's opinion, we can give weightage to somebody else's opinion. So every opinion has got some value, but it's not necessary that simply because we want to give respect to somebody, we need to, you can say, include that opinion in a of thing. So giving respect is good, is fine, because we are allowing the person to we are ready to reflect on it. We are ready to think about it, but it's not necessary that we are must finally accept it or make part of the final draft that we make. Thank you.
If we do that, then even decision making will become a problem. Okay, thank you so much, sir. I don't see any more questions. If anyone has a question, please type it quickly. Otherwise, we will. I think that's a lot of questions for the day. It's already 4:10. Now I request Dr. Kamalpreet to please come. Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful and informative session, sir. I request Dr. Kamalpreet to come and propose a vote of thanks. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sonia. Sir, it is indeed a privilege to listen to you, sir, and your insightful lecture on reflection as a tool for teaching and learning was full of wisdom and information. I'm sure that your elaborated deliberations on reflection as a critical tool that amplifies the process of teaching and learning has surely enlightened the participants, and they will largely benefit from your talk. Once again, we thank you, sir, for having spared your precious time for all of us and to highlight the possible gains that enlarge when reflection is prominently employed in the learning process. Thanks to Professor Deepti ma'am for organizing such a wonderful session, or Professor Parveen Kumarji, and thanks to Sonia for arranging the meeting in such a meticulous way. Thank you. And thanks to the participants for making this event successful. Thanks to all.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Deepti ma'am, would you like to say something? Ma'am, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, dear participants, our members, guests, faculty. Thank you for coming here and joining this webinar. Thank you, sir, for your insights. Ma'am, with your permission, may I end speaking now? Okay. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.